Another story. Watch this. Russian fighter jets pounding Syria again today with a new round of airstrikes, bombing targets as President Putin enters diplomatic talks with leaders in Paris. Again, it appears that Putin is going after opponents of Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. Peter Ducey's live at the Pentagon today. Peter, good morning there. Can the Pentagon confirm that the Russians attacked any ISIS targets on the ground yet?
Bill, the word here at the Pentagon is that there is still no evidence that any of the Russian airstrikes have targeted or destroyed any ISIS targets. Like they say, the reports from the ground are that the Russians are instead trying to get rid of President Assad's political enemies, including some that have been getting help from the CIA. But defense officials are declining to say how they will or how they would defend these CIA-backed rebels from Russian airstrikes, and this is why.
You're talking about a hypothetical situation in which case specific opposition forces would be targeted, and we don't have that situation right in front of us.
And over at the White House, officials are refusing to call out the Russians for singling out U.S.-backed rebels. The word of the day at the briefing yesterday was indiscriminately. Josh Earnest said over and over again that Putin's people are striking in Syria indiscriminately. So any friends of ours that may be killed are just a result of Russian targeting that is indiscriminate.
So while that's happening in one part of Syria, what are we doing? Are we still flying planes, sorties over Syria?
It appears that the plan has changed, Bill, even though the Pentagon told us yesterday that, quote, we have not altered operations in Syria to accommodate new players on the battlefield. That is just not what the numbers show. The U.S. had been averaging 8 airstrikes a day in Syria, but on the first day of Russian involvement, the U.S. launched 1.
Wow. Peter Ducey, thanks from the Pentagon there with the latest. Martha.
All right, so let's bring in Republican presidential candidate Senator Marco Rubio. He clearly predicted this current situation that we're seeing unfold in Syria just weeks ago. Senator, good morning. Good to have you with us.
Good morning.
So you just heard Peter Ducey giving us the update on what is going on the ground, and the White House is claiming that anyone that we have trained that has been hit on the ground is an indiscriminate attack on the part of Vladimir Putin and the Russians. Given your background, what's the take on this?
That's absurd. That's absurd. Vladimir Putin is deliberately targeting all the non-ISIS rebels. The more moderate they are, the more he's going to target them, and here's why. If he can wipe out all the non-ISIS elements on the ground in Syria, then they can turn to the world and say, okay, guys, here's your choice, ISIS or Assad, because there's no one left, because we killed all the other non-ISIS people. That's exactly what he's doing. He's trying to thin out the opposition so that the only opposition left in Syria to Assad is ISIS. And at that point, he'll be able to force the world to support Assad. And that's what he's doing. I don't understand why the White House doesn't see it and why the president and his administration don't understand that.
You know, for the past couple of years, we've heard about the refugee crisis. We've heard about the need to back moderate rebels in Syria. The White House has talked about, you know, efforts to help them in a myriad of ways, you know, whether it's aid or weapons over the past several years. And it appears that Vladimir Putin sized up the situation, as you accurately said in the debate, the past debate, most recent debate, looked at the situation and said, look, the United States isn't really doing anything here. There's no reason for me not to go in and defend Assad.
Right. In fact, if you look at that region, for example, this is going to sound absurd to your viewers, but in the region, there are a lot of people who believe the United States actually is supporting ISIS, that we created ISIS. It's a conspiracy theory, it's absurd, but it's taken root in the minds of a lot of people. And one of the reasons why is because they know what American air power looks like. They saw it during the war in Iraq. And they're saying what you're doing now is not real American air power. And so that's why it's important not just to do a better job of targeting ISIS for purposes of defeating them, but also winning the confidence of the people on the ground that we're trying to work with. And in the absence of that confidence, that's what creates the space for Putin to step in and try to replace us. And he's been very cunning about it. And this president and this administration have been, quite frankly, incompetent about it.
I want to play the bit of sound from the debate that I mentioned for the folks at home. Let's play that.
Have an understanding of exactly what it is Russia and Putin are doing, and it's pretty straightforward. He wants to reposition Russia once again as a geopolitical force. Here's what you're going to see in the next few weeks. The Russians will begin to fly combat missions in that region, not just targeting ISIS, but in order to prop up Assad.
How did you know that that was the way it was going to go?
Because they were positioning air assets in Syria, and there was no reason to have combat aircraft in Syria except to conduct those attacks. Second, it's because you could clearly see that it was part of a broader pattern on behalf of Russia. Number one, to be against anything we're for, but number two, anywhere possible to try to nudge the United States out of its role of influence. So he clearly wants Russia to be an equal to the United States around the world. They can't do that economically because the Russian economy is smaller than Italy's. So he has to do it militarily.
Right,
and this is one more step in that process.
You know, so now, I mean, if this is the case, that we are basically pitted against Russia. Russia is trying to get rid of those who want to topple Assad, and we're there to knock out ISIS. So if they are truly knocking out the people that we are backing, I mean, you can only imagine what is going through the minds of these moderate Syrians, you know, it's in small numbers these days, and the CIA-backed people that have been trained there in small numbers as well. When they're looking up into the sky and they've got Russian bombers coming in at them, and they're saying, where is the United States? So are we going to step it up to defend them? And what position does that put us in? Are we then at war with Russia?
Well, first of all, the reason why the non-Islamist rebels are such small in numbers and why this whole program of arming and equipping them has been a disaster is because the administration took too long. By the time they got around to doing it, a lot of those people were either dead or had been forced into exile. What we should be doing is what I've been calling for months. Create a safe zone within Syria. The Turks have said they would cooperate. An area that's protected both on the ground and from the air. And from that spot is where these rebel groups that will take on ISIS and Assad can help organize themselves. It can also be a place where refugees can go to instead of having to make that dangerous journey into Europe or ultimately to the United States as well. That's what we should have been doing months ago. I hope we'll do it now. It's a little harder to do it now than it was a few months ago, but we still have time, I believe. But this administration has no strategy. When I read that they were caught off guard and surprised by what Putin did, I just shake my head. I don't understand how that can be true. It's unbelievable.
All right. Before I let you go, I just want to ask you a quick question. Donald Trump is, you know, saying about you and Jeb Bush, and let's put up the number for the RCP average. You're pretty much neck and neck. You're slightly ahead of Jeb Bush right now. He says that you guys hate each other. He says they hate each other more than anybody in this room hates their neighbor. What do you say?
He doesn't know what he's talking about. I have great admiration for Governor Bush. We're friends. We're running for the same office. I'm not running against him. I'm running for president. It doesn't change my feelings towards him as a person. You don't have to hate the people you're running against. And in the case of Governor Bush, who I've known for a very long time, I admire him, and we're friends. But we're competitors now, too. And we can do that in a way that I think is deserving of what the American people deserve in this election cycle.
So what do you think Trump's trying to do there? What's Trump trying to do?
I have no idea. Who knows with Donald what he's trying to do? Who cares? I'm running for president. I'm focused on the future of our country.
Senator, thank you very much. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
More from that in a moment.